What is up YouTube, I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wildrift, and in this video I'm bringing you my tier list for patch 5.1D. So the cool things about 5.1D is the addition of Maokai, who came in midway through the last patch, and of course the Jax rework. So let's see exactly where they fall into our tier list. Let's not forget that Maokai had some huge nerfs after being obviously god tier in every role. But let's see where he falls in now. Starting off with the Baron lane. And Maokai is actually going to be S tier. Because Baron lane is just not his best role. He does have a few mana issues in the Baron lane without having obviously blue buff. Having to spam his abilities. However, he's still going to be an S tier Baron laner. And of course, Jax is going to be probably the best Baron laner after his rework. His rework was just a straight up buff. Jax does the exact same thing. But now he does more damage doing it because of his ultimate change. And now he also has more options on his build. He can build a lot more magic damage since he has a lot more AP scalings. I do recommend playing him with a Divine Thunder or a Trinity Force into Rift Maker into more Bruiser and Tank items. I don't think full AP is the way to go. However, with this more Bruiser AP build, he's definitely god tier. And of course, joining him in the god tier is going to be Fiora, who received some really nice buffs in this last patch. Her AD scalings are really high on her true damage, so if you're able to get ahead especially, you will absolutely destroy everyone in a 1v1. And of course, joining them is going to be Garen, who I think is probably the easiest best champ to play. He's so effective either as a tank or as a bruiser, and he's so easy to play at the same time that it honestly makes no sense. This champion does deserve a nerf, so if you're looking for some quick, easy wins, definitely pick Garen. In the S tier, of course, we have all the top picks that are just not on the level of the god tier champions. The god tier champions are just way too strong, both in the early and the late game. In the A tier, we have a few more niche picks that work well situationally, like the Teemo, like the Cannon, who actually got buffed the patch before this, and he is a really good option. He just can't really compete against the god tier champions. Like if you're playing Cannon, you're laning against the Garen, it's going to be a very, very difficult game for you. In the B tier, we have some very, very niche situational picks that I don't really recommend. However, they can be good in the right situation. This is why I'm including them. Even Kayle can be B tier in the right situation. She can be really strong. So now let's move on to the jungle. So in the jungle, I've decided to go ahead and add Viego and Lilia back into the god tier. The nerfs were definitely not as substantial as I thought they would be, so I've just put them back into the god tier. And of course, joining them will be the after nerf Maokai. That's right, he's still a god tier champion after all those nerfs in the jungle. It's unbelievable, but his jungle clear is still really quick. Since he didn't really rely on his ult attacks, so it doesn't matter that his AD went down, he's relying on his first ability, percent health damage, so he can still do a lot of damage to jungle camp, so his clear is still really quick, and he's still an absolute menace in team fights. So he still definitely deserves to be in god tier. In S tier, we see a couple new champions. Obviously, Jax is now an S tier jungler because even though his passive doesn't work on the jungle camps, his second ability does more damage to jungle camps, so his clear speed is actually not that bad. His first clear speed is pretty slow, but after his first clear, and he really starts to get going, especially after you get Trinity Force, which I definitely recommend as the first item in the jungle. Your clear is really fast, your damage is insanely high, and you're so good in these 2v2, 3v3 skirmishes that junglers get into the early and mid game. Graves has also joined the S tier. His clear speed is just out of this world, and he's probably the best invade jungler. Once you get your armor stacks with your third ability, you do not lose any fights, so definitely look to contest Skull, look to invade if you can, especially with the red buff, constantly slowing the enemies and kiting them out. Graves is an absolute monster. Obviously, Lee Sin is gonna be god tier forever. This champion just needs to be nerfed. But there's many S tier junglers right now. There's a lot of variety in the jungle. When I say variety, I mean it's mostly carry junglers. The only tank options are Mumu and Maokai. However, there's a lot of really, really strong junglers, both AP, AD, and now we even have a couple tanks. The A tier junglers can still be really, really good in the right situations. Carry junglers like Nyla, Kayn, and Zed are pretty much only there because they're outshadowed by other carry junglers, but they're still really, really strong. Diana obviously had a big buffs a couple patches ago. Nunu's pretty strong as another tank option if you're not going to go for a Mumu or Maokai, or even a Wukong, I guess, a bit of a tank. then Nunu can be a great option. I would recommend staying away from the B tier champions, however, they can be really good in the right situation. Especially I want to highlight Shan and Gwen. Gwen absolutely destroys tanks, great pick against Maokai, right? And Shan is a great supportive option. He's obviously not as CC heavy as these other tanks, but if you're really good at the jungle and can read the map well, you're always ready to counter gank with your ultimate. However, the rest of the B tier champions I would probably recommend staying away from because they don't really fill any niches. So they're not even that good in most situations. For example, why would you play Fizz when you can play like Evelynn or Echo, right? And definitely I would stay away from the C and D tier champions. I've had people tell me that Rengar is good. I just don't see it, honestly. Obviously, Kale is a terrible option. Twitch, do not even bother. He's just nerfed into the ground. He's only useful with a Lulu. So now let's jump into the mid laners. So in the mid lane, Jace did get nerfed, unfortunately, but well deserved. So I'm actually gonna drop him down into the S tier because his burst simply isn't that good, and it was mostly a mid lane effective nerf because you want to use your first ability to just pounce on someone and absolutely destroy them. So Kassadin is going to be the only God tier champion. Obviously, Kassadin is more of a situational pick because he does get hard countered by champions like Jace, champions like Lucian. So of course, he's more of a counter pick to a lot of these AP champions that are really, really strong, a lot of these mages. But if you get him in the right situation, he's definitely, not just God tier, he's absolutely insane. In the S tier, of course, we have all the usual really strong mages and really strong assassins, like the Akali, like the Diana, like the Yasuo. Obviously, Syndra, Morgana, and Ziggs have been the best mages, and Corki joining them as well, who is kind of a mage, pretty much. In the A tier are other really strong options, especially situationally. TF made his way from S tier to A tier with those nerfs, however he's still a great utility option with his stun cards that didn't really get affected. In the B tier, again we have some very, very situational picks. I do want to point out that Katarina actually made her way from D tier into B tier. She's actually a good champion now if you can get to her in a comp where the enemies don't have a lot of lockdown, they don't have a lot of CC, and you can just jump in there and pentakill the enemy team. So again, these are more situational picks that can be really good in certain situations. Kennen, obviously, his team fighting is insane, and he can be really good. Aurelion Sol can be really good in the late game. And the C tier champions I wouldn't recommend picking, unless maybe you're like a one-trick Pyke. Moving on to the ADC, Dragon Lane position, Varus honestly deserves his own tier because he is quite a bit better than Ezreal right now. Varus is the best ADC, no questions asked. I don't know why they buffed him. He's been God tier forever, and the buffs are actually really meaningful in most of his builds, especially the Essence Reaver, Edge of Night build, or even Trinity Force is extremely powerful right now. On-hit Varus is a little weaker with the Terminus nerfs. However, with these AD buffs, I don't see why you would try his other builds. Like AP Varus and on-hit Varus are still God tier, but this AD build with Essence Reaver is definitely the way to go, and he's not just God tier with that build, he's probably the pick of the patch, right? He's absolutely insane, his damage is insanely high. If you hit your ulti, you just do a fully charged first ability and it's always a kill. Pretty much on like every squishy champion, and does like 60% of the tank's HP. So definitely the best champion. Kai'Sa saw some slight nerfs, however I don't think that knocks her down to the S tier because honestly she was already ready to enter the God tier. So these nerfs are just going to make her a bit weaker, however she definitely still deserves to be in the S tier. Not many other changes have happened. I'm kind of debating maybe putting Jhin into the A tier, however he's still just not there. I don't think he's that strong. Jinx, Vayne still quite weak, and obviously Twitch is awful. Senna should never be played ADC, to be honest, unless you have like a tank support. Obviously, I keep saying this in every tier list, but Senna wants to play as a support that carries and someone else is farming. Kindred and Action are not even ADCs. I'd have them in D tier to deter people from playing them. Now let's move on to supports. A couple things have changed in the support tier. Obviously, we have the addition of Maokai, who I think is great on the support role, and he's definitely gonna be God tier even after the nerfs. Because while they do impact him, his kit is just still way too good. He has way too much crowd control in these team fights. His second ability is very spammable and very useful. Being able to just root someone and knock them back into your team is just so insane, especially on the support role. He's going to be joined by Lulu as the best enchanter and Noiles as another really good engaged support. In the S tier, Thresh has fallen from the God tier because I actually think the nerfs were quite heavy. They're going to impact his laning phase a lot. So he's going to go from having probably the strongest laning phase as a support to just a mediocre laning phase. So he's definitely a lot more manageable, especially if you're playing a tank support. It's going to be really hard for Thresh to get those early kills. But honestly, every champion in the S tier and God tier is really, really good. In the A tier, there's a few supports that I think are really strong and can be really good in the right situations. For example, you don't really want to be playing Soraka into Thresh. However, if you can play Soraka into Braum, for example, then Soraka is honestly really insane immediately. But again, she's more of a situational pick, and this is why she's lower than what a lot of you guys would think she would be. Unfortunately, Brand has fallen off a bit. His damage is now quite a bit lower. If you want to go for a mage support, I do recommend Karma or Lux instead. Even Zyra can be a great alternative. The C tier supports I would mostly stay away from. The B tier supports, Ashe can be good if played right. Morgana I don't really recommend. She's kind of a weird support, but her Black Shield can have a lot of value for your team. So this is my tier list. If you agree with it, let me know by liking the video. If you disagree with it, leave a comment down below explaining what you think should be where. I always love hearing your guys' opinions, debating with you a bit in the comments, or just flaming you for your opinions. That's always fun. So please comment down below your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and let me know what champions you're going to be abusing this patch. Thank you so much for watching and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.